Hey everyone, I have a very special guest today. Her name is Erin Davis, and our mutual friend Kelly Marshall introduced us. And I'm so grateful, Erin, that she has introduced us and how quickly I feel like we're building this friendship. So, if you have been wondering about brand or thinking about your brand or thinking about creating a brand or rethinking your brand, you're going to love this conversation. We're going to dive into all of those things. And Erin, I just want to welcome you to Differently.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And likewise, thank you, Kelly Marshall, for introducing us. And I have loved getting to know you and discovering this kind of kismet connection. Even though it's through technology, it's just been really awesome and I love it.
It's amazing. I think we talked about that. Like, it is amazing how we make friends for these really special virtual friends. And
Yeah.
hopefully someday we get to meet in person.
Yes.
Also, I loved that you were listening to the podcast. I don't know if Kelly had shared it with you, but you've been listening to the podcast before we connected, and that was really special for me too.
Yeah. Yep. I've actually loved it and it's in kind of my favorites. And so I hope everyone that might be tuning in for the first time will, find some of your other episodes. And I love the connection of your work and journaling. And yeah, so that's been really meaningful for me too. So to be able to be here with you is just super cool.
Mhm. So good. So, Erin is a brand strategist and marketing coach for women business owners and really around authentic brands. So, give us a sense of like what's been your journey getting to doing this work, because I feel like there's some important pieces there.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I've been in this communications marketing world for over 20 years. My education was in communications and marketing. And then all my work as an employee at different entities and then into starting my own business has all been centered around this sort of work. Um, but a couple of years ago, I just kind of reached probably age related, but also just kind of that burnout point where I had taken on probably too many clients and I'd started to wear more hats than probably were suited for me. And it was just time to rethink what I was doing and why I was doing it. And so that's where Matchbox Women was born. But what I had done over that 20 years or so was honed how I did what I was doing and how I made it work for my clients so that they could use my know-how and kind of run with it. So Matchbox Women is a shift to working specifically with women business owners and taking that methodology of defining who you are and what your gifts are and how you can apply that to your business, which creates that sustainability. We often think of sustainability as it relates to our income or money or how we, kind of keep going. We think about scaling and growth, but there's another piece of sustainability is how do I keep doing this? How do I keep showing up? How do I grow in a way that matches me and what I can keep doing and not what I can keep carrying and not just growing to meet a financial goal. While that's important, I think sometimes we leave the other half behind. And my work is helping women go, how do I do both?
It's so beautiful. I think it's so fascinating. Like when you were talking about reaching a point of burnout, I feel like I've had so many conversations lately of like, that is the pivot point. Like the challenge that shows up in our life is often the pivot point to something so beautiful. And I think when you were in that pivot point and the uncomfortableness and the pain of the challenge, we forget that often those are like those pivot points that, turn to something really great on the other side. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like, excuse me, I feel like burnout is a bit of an overused word. And really, burnout is just kind of like a bit of an opportunity where you're forced to take a look at, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Where am I at? How did I get here? And what am I going to do now? And I feel like it's kind of that crossroads position to give it kind of other words and another name than
Mm.
just, I don't know, the overused burnout that we're all used to now.
That's so true. Would you be willing to share like what that burnout looked like for you? Like what was the impact of that that was painful enough that caused you to pivot?
Absolutely. I started my own business to get the freedom that we all want. Freedom with schedule. I'm a mom of four. I have a husband. I have extended family members. My husband and I support our aging parents, and we all have other facets to our life than just our work. And all of that freedom that I tried to create had just, I didn't have it anymore. And so
Mm,
that pivot point was like, wait a minute. It actually would just be easier to go somewhere else and just do what I'm told, meaning go
mm,
find an employer and just not, I just was done thinking. I was done striving.
mm,
I just couldn't do it all. And I'd lost the freedom that I had, you know, started out seeking, where I was, and that freedom was doing the work, but using my gifts in a way that like made sense and was sustainable. But I
mm,
stopped listening to myself and I actually didn't know how anymore. Like I was just doing all the things that people were asking of me or that people needed from me or that I had signed a contract for. And it just all became too much. And I didn't know how to answer my own questions or take the next step. And
mm,
that's when I went, wait a minute. Everything that I'm doing for my clients around branding and marketing, which marketing to me is just, it's just the business word for sharing. It's just the business word for
mm,
making a relationship so that there's a meaningful interaction, so that you serve somebody and that you have a transaction or a money exchange so you can keep doing it. But all of the work that I'd been doing for clients, I wasn't applying to myself. And so I had to stop, turn around and go, okay, let's apply this to yourself. And in doing that, I was like, wow, I wonder if there are other women in the same position as
mm.
me that need this kind of like rebuild of the foundation. And it turns out that there were plenty of women out there trying to run their businesses and do it in a way that they knew how to answer their own questions. They knew how to show up every day, and it was aligned with who they wanted to be and what their gifts were and how they were really going to be able to show up for the people that they wanted to serve, and have the impact they wanted to make, and still be the mom and still be the wife and still show up for friends and family in ways that they wanted.
I think that that's so important. Like, even sometimes when we're doing work that we love, we can get sort of buried in that, even still. Like, I can think back to a pivot in my life where I had to like really look at, like, I was being overproductive and even doing work that I love. And I feel like I'm in a pivot right now in my business. Like, I feel like this conversation is really timely for me too, because I think there comes, well, actually I want to ask you that. Like, are there different times in our business life cycle where, when do we need to be looking back at brand and kind of reassessing and rethinking? And are there indicators of when we, could be looking at that?
Well, I would say the most simple answer, I have a brand guide, and I think brand guides, people usually think of, well, it's the place where I keep my marketing images, my fonts and my colors and my
My logo.
logos, and that's what my brand guide is. Well, my version of a brand guide is way more than that. It's everything. It's really what your essence is, but written down and articulated, which kind of dovetails with your practice of journaling. There's something that happens when you write it down and you articulate it to the best of your ability. And so the short answer to your question is, you need to revisit that. So if someone works with me and we create their brand guide, or they take my course and they learn how to build it themselves, they're not really done, right? The brand, just like a human being, grows, evolves, and changes. And so you need to go back to that brand guide and breathe new life into it. Answer the questions. Does this still fit who I am? Are these still my goals? your origin story, and probably maybe your mission or your vision might remain the same, but maybe you've grown a new skill, or you're offering a new service, or you want to pivot all of your services to something else, but you've still got that foundation. And it's that regular checking back in to make sure that all of the aspects you articulated still reflect who you are. But if all of that just lives in your head and kind of this like nebulous, this is who I am, this is who my business is, it's really hard in a busy world to go, okay, what do I need to change? Because you're not looking at anything and you're kind of like, where do I start? If you've got your brand guide, if you've got a brand written down, you know where to go, right? And you can do pieces at a time. You can do a whole rebrand, rebrand. It's really up to you, but you've got a place like a backdrop, a firm foundation to go, what do I want to do next? And without that, it's just more decisions we have to make. It's, more things on our to-do list that we stay on our to-do list because we don't really know where to start. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of doing life as a mom, a business owner, a woman in this modern world is, how many more decisions can I possibly make in a day? How many more to-dos can I possibly put on my list? And by building a brand that encompasses so much of who you are and even your habits, you've got a place to go back to it's all written down, it's streamlined. You go and you decide, yes, this still reflects, move on. Keep making decisions that look like that brand that you've already designed. And I like to say that your brand is basically the humanity of your business. And that's why I think a brand starts with the person. It starts with the person behind the business, or it could be the people behind the business. And you are deciding, who is that business going to show up to be? The brand is the humanity of that business. How is that human going to conduct themselves? How are they going to deliver on services? Why are they here? Have they grown and are changing and are going to do something new? That's the power and the definition that a brand gives. It's so personal while it's still the forward-facing business at the same time. It's really just kind of magical.
Wow. I mean, I believe in this so much, not only for your business, but for your life. Like having a vision and having commitments that I'm in my life, for my marriage, for how I parent, for my business, for the way I operate outside in my life. Having that is so essential to everything for me because of my humanity. Oh, I can go to sleep overnight and like kind of forget who am I and what am I doing and what's important.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like falling back on that over and over again is so incredibly important. And I think sometimes we think of brand as, I don't know, maybe it's like this added luxury, but the way that you're describing it, it is not an added luxury. This is like a foundational matter that can help anchor everything that you're doing. So I know that you speak a lot about, authentic brand, and I think you've already started to describe that a little bit, but would you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. I think somebody could, as an example, somebody could call me and be like, Erin, this is what I do. This is how I do it. These are my services. I could poke around online. I could find some of your work. I could see what people have said about you, and I could build a brand guide for you. I really could. But there is something different about starting with yourself and putting your own personal components in it first, and then building to connecting your business to it. So I start all of my brand clients and in my course, when someone's doing that on their own, I frame the whole thing around the body, mind, and spirit. And that connects to the why, how, and what of your business. So making sure that you've defined those personal elements and then building upon those and pulling them into the business creates this this truth and this articulation of who you are. And then you've kind of like evolved it into a business. And that's you being you. That's, let's take, I don't know, let's take coaching. You and I both coach clients. There are millions, I don't know, maybe that's not the right number, thousands and thousands of
It
coaches
feels
out
like
there.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so, coaches, if you're going to just, kind of water down the services, you're talking to people directly and helping them overcome this, or that, whatever it is. But that's what coaches do. But what's the difference? The difference is you. There is
Mhm.
no one like Carla. There is only one Carla, and Carla shows up to deliver on these services in Carla's way, right? Now you can replicate your way if you have other service providers working with you or contractors doing something for you. And that's kind of the extended value of having a brand, is being able to kind of replicate yourself. But that differentiation that feels so right and so true and is you, that's the difference. Like, makes me a different coach than you, and you a different coach from Kelly or whoever it is. And that's the authentic part that we need to get out of us. And there is a process for that. And there's other people's processes too. But that is the part that we need to pull out of us and articulate so we can share it. Nobody knows if we don't know how to say it, if we don't know where to say it, if it's not in language that resonates with the people we want to hear it and take it in and go, oh, maybe you can help me. Um, yeah, a brand is an authentic one is us taking our gifts and being able to share them, which that's why we're all here. We are all different, and we all have different unique gifts and different ways of displaying them or sharing them. And it takes us all, which is kind of the philosophy of the Matchbox Women. It's a togetherness. It's a community way. You're not doing it by yourself. I'm not doing it by myself. It's the way we come together and share so that we have hope and that we can keep going and we can keep serving. We can keep sharing our gifts because that's what we're meant to do.
Well, and I think that it's like what you're saying is having a coach or having people around you to help you do that, because I'm at a place in my business where I feel like some of that is happening on a greater level than I've ever experienced, because I have a small team, like people around me that help reflect that. Sometimes we're so close to it, like we don't know what those things are, but like
Mm-hmm.
their reflection back to me or what they experienced inside the program with me, because they both went through it, is so valuable. Does that make
I
sense?
love
And so I
that.
imagine in your
Yes.
community, you guys are all reflecting to each other, like who you are. And I feel like that's such a gift.
Yeah. I think even when you're trying to just articulate a point, you say it out loud and then you hear, somebody's
Mhm.
feedback or you hear them repeat it back to you. That's really valuable. And,
Yes.
I guess kind of going back to maybe what burnout or, some of the challenges I faced in my business was I was a very solopreneur. I was running a business that really should have maybe isn't the right way to say it, but like, could have expanded to include more support, like human support to um, take on some of the work. But I wasn't. I was doing it by myself, and I'd really gotten the business got bigger, but I got smaller. And
Mhm.
I just was I got to stay in control of all these things. And when I actually got to a place where it was kind of like, I got to do something, I got a coach, I got a business coach. And all of a sudden it was like, I was hearing things reflected back to me and I was able to share something. And it was even in that, kind of simple relationship that was not just myself, but I was building this community where I was hearing more. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, yeah, no, that's not what I want anymore. Like,
Mhm.
I need to shift, and there's encouragement and there's okay, wait, I said that out loud and no, that's not what I meant. I want to make it different, right? Like we're meant to be in community. And I
Mm,
have learned that so, I guess, practically over the last couple of years that we're just not meant to do any of this on our own. We're not
mm,
meant to carry grief on our own. We're not meant to build businesses on our own. We're not meant to mother on our own. Um, and I don't know that I ever believed that before.
mm.
And I can't see doing it any other way now.
Wow. I can totally relate. Like for so many years, I just thought I'm just going to be a solopreneur and this is how it is. And I didn't see it any other way and I didn't want it any other way. And in the last year, God has showed me like all these people that are around me that I don't know, like I saw them, but I didn't see them. And then
Mhm.
literally like helped me see people that would be more closely involved. And then, you know, I had two people go through my program that are like, we want to help you share this as much as we
Mhm.
can. And so now
Mhm.
they're part of the team. And that, just what you're saying, it made me emotional because that has been the greatest gift. And like, I feel selfish in a way that all those years, like, and maybe it just wasn't the right timing.
Mhm. Mhm.
It is such a gift to have other people. And it has opened up so much that I never even realized. And I feel like I had this amazing playground of the work I do. And it was like, it's time to share that and let other people come into the sandbox and play
Yeah.
too.
Oh, I
And like,
love that.
it brought me so much joy. So I totally believe what you're saying. And
I love
maybe for
that.
people listening, like if you feel like you don't have that, you might have it and not actually realize it too. Cause I feel
Mm.
like that was true for me. I didn't realize how much community was around me because I think I was looking for it to look a certain way. And
Mhm.
it,
I love that like example or kind of picture of the playground. It's kind of like you built this playground, but you had the gates locked and you only let someone come in like when you were like, okay, I want to play with you. Like, can we do this? And you get to a place where you're just kind of like, I'm just going to open the gate. And if someone walks by and they're interested, or you put a sign out that's like, hey, come play hours or
yeah.
10 to 2 every day. Like,
Right.
then all of a sudden you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to see what happens here. And
Mm,
I think as women sometimes we like get guilty or we're like, oh, I did it wrong, or like being the solopreneur for the time, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or I should have let people in earlier. It's like that's gone. It's done.
yeah.
And you and I are both, you live and you learn and you get to this place, and neither of us would be, at this kind of, I guess, more community oriented place without having that lived experience. And
And
I,
there's
I
a
don't
time and a
know.
season. Well, there's just a
Yeah, for
time and
all
a
of it, for
season
each
for
part.
everything. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So two things. One, can you speak a little bit to like what it like just a tiny snapshot of what it means to have sort of your mind, body, spirit in the brand? Like, can you
Hmm.
paint a little picture of what that is?
Yeah. So let's see if I can like backtrack a little bit from like maybe the more practical. The why, how, what was made famous by Simon Sinek, right? The why of what you're doing, then the how. How do you deliver upon your work? Maybe your values, the style in which you offer your services, and then your what is just the thing you do, right? You coach, you I don't know, make widgets. Like the thing you do is real simple. The why is what keeps you anchored and kind of breathes life, if you will, into the rest of the how and the what. From the mind, body, spirit perspective, well, let me back that you need the why, how, and the what. You need all three of those things in your business to flourish, to grow, to connect with others. People don't just connect with services, like we said. There's lots of coaches out there, but what makes you different? And people connect with you on why you're doing it. When they hear your story, they're like, "Yep, you're my person," right? Um, the same goes for your mind, body, spirit connection. I think a lot of us are well versed at living in our mind and our body. Like, we physically have to get up every day. Like, we think through what we're going to do. We've got a business. There's all this mind and body action, or dovetailing it with the why, how, what. There's a lot of how and what living, right? But the spirit and the why is kind of the hand in hand of the business and the personal. We need all three of those things in our life. We have to feed our spirit, which animates and gives a life to the body and the mind, the thinking and the doing of everything. But we often, I think, neglect our spirit. We neglect the things that are important to that part of us. And if we're neglecting one part of us, we will reach a stage. We will reach a point at which our life, our your God, whoever it is that you call into that spiritual part of you, that will come calling. And if we can do that, like right now, if we can decide that I'm going to, like, I feed into my body, my mind, my how, my what in my business, if I can inject time and attention and intentionality to my why and into my spirit, that essence of us, that animating life force, I'm going to do better. I'm going to be able to keep going. I'm going to have all three parts of me pumping and working, not just two. And for me, making sure that I spend time and intention in all three of those aspects of me has made all the difference. And it's not a new concept. I didn't make that up. I think it's pretty common to understand there's three parts of us. But what I think is less common is being really intentional about that third part, which is the spirit. That kind of, I think some people would call it soul. I call it spirit. Because for me, I connect to God. I connect to my Heavenly Father, and that's how I nurture that part of me that really floods the rest of the part of me that people are interacting with on a regular basis, and that my business is interacting with on a regular basis. Does that
oh my gosh. It totally communicates. And I think it is more different than you may realize. Because I don't think that you think about, I have this writing exercise. It's like, I think it's a mind, body, spirit. And it's kind of like but it's like rooms in your house. And it asks you, like, how much time do you spend in each of these rooms? And what's your go-to room when things are going wrong? And it's really insightful, because I think what you find is that you neglect a certain room, or you don't spend as much time there. And if we can be spending time in all of those rooms, everything's better as a result of that. And the spirit is, like, I notice the more I take care of my energy, the more I am centered and grounded, the better I can do everything in my business. And it's so counterintuitive to what I used to think, because the mind just, it just wants to be a machine and just keep you working like a machine. And I've had to reprogram my mind to be able to create more space in my life for spirit, for God, for being a relaxed human being, so that I can show up and do all the other things.
Yeah. Oh, I love that example of the rooms in the house. That resonates so much. And I think what's coming up for me is that, if we don't know how to approach that room, or if we're not used to going in there, and we kind of go in there and we stand and we're like, what am I doing here? We might just kind of slink or like move back into what's comfortable. And I think through my work and what I've helped other women do is to decide, what are my habits around those different aspects of who I am, or what do I do in that room, so that when I get there, I know what to do. And that evolves and grows over time, and it changes. But a starting place is to be like, what am I going to do there? And how much time am I going to spend there? And we might find that to start, we're like doing nothing, but we said we're going to spend 10 minutes in that room, or we said we're going to spend 10 minutes, allowing that part of us to exist and being aware of it. And so you do that. And just like a business grows and evolves over time, so do those different rooms, if you will, that are a part of you. And as you keep feeding those things and as you keep allowing that growth to happen, you will see that happen in your business. It just, it can't not. It does happen. And I think it's the best, most beautiful part about connecting our humanity to our business. And actually for women, you don't want to be in this like sales status. Like you don't want to be in this sales cycle all the time. I mean, it does exist, right? It is a part of business, but it's a name, and or it's just a vernacular that, for me is more about relationship, and is, more about that opportunity to show up and help somebody. And I do that best when I'm doing my best. And for me, a brand is today's a good example. You and I spoke earlier. I have had a heck of a week. There's been all sorts of unforeseen, bummer stuff that has happened. And then you couple first week of school with that as well. And it's just a lot. But I know how I want to show up so that my future self can thank me. And without the work I've done to build myself into my brand and into my business, I wouldn't know how to serve my future self. And so today, being here with you, it was a much easier decision because I knew how to show up. And the reality is that we don't always want to, or we don't always feel like it, and we don't always know how. But if we've articulated how we can serve our future self, not just, oh, I want to do my best, I want my future self to thank me. Like that's just words. But if we've articulated that and defined it, like we can use that. Like we can go, okay, I know what to do, even if I don't feel like it. I feel in life you can hold two things. You can hold sorrow and grief, or tragedy or struggle or anger, and you can do the other stuff too. You can show up for your work, and you can do your business, and you can, be there for your kids or whatever your responsibility or thing is that day. But if you don't know how, or you have nothing else to fall back on, that's where we go, oh man, I can't possibly keep going. But today was kind of this really cool and special reminder that I know how to show up. Like I know myself. And yes, am I holding this other like hard stuff, like literally a bucket of hard stuff? Yeah. But I also have this other direction. I also have this other stuff that's really good that I can lean into and I can follow. And I'm building my community, and Carla's part of that. And I'm really looking forward to talking to Carla. And she speaks life into me, and that is good and right. And I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. And so, yeah.
It was so beautiful because you literally modeled what you do in the world today. Because for you listening, I heard what her week was like and actually said, like, we can reschedule this conversation. And when we actually got on the video, she's like, that sounded really good. Like, that's really what I wanted to do. And
Yes, please.
how real is that? Like, how many times do we want to cancel on something? And sometimes that is the right thing to do, but sometimes the right thing to do is to show up because that's what you've committed to doing. And like, that's who you've committed to being. And that's what she described. She like explained that this was like a moment to fall back into her own brand and who she's committed to being. And that we have that, the way she describes brand, you have something to fall back to that reminds you like, I can do this. And I think that's so, so, so valuable. At one point, or in the work I do, I have a lesson about commitments versus feelings. And because came from a period of my life where I noticed like my feelings were just all over the place on any given day. And if I followed those, I was never going to get anywhere. And
I
so
still
I
have those days.
yes. But having commitments, it like takes out the thinking work because you're just like, nope, like I'm committed to this since I'm going to show up. And that's what you did. And I just thank you for modeling that.
Mm,
It was awesome to witness.
thank you. Thank you. Well, I
Yeah.
do want to say that I like, I don't act alone. The time I spend in my spirit encourages and
Mhm.
fuels me, but also allowing community to kind of lift and buoy me is in you. That makes all the difference. And I guess a big encouragement I would have for any listeners is to look around you. And if you're feeling alone, like that's your sign, like reach out to somebody, start doing life and work with others. And that I really feel like that will make all the difference because I had someone to share who I am with today. Like, and when I say that, like my brand, like I had somewhere to use that. And that was with you today and your listeners. And, that makes all the difference. Life is hard. Life is
Mhm.
hard. And, we're just not meant to do it alone. And I guess don't get me wrong, a brand also has like your messaging and your marketing outlets and like all that tactical stuff. I know we're talking
There,
a lot about maybe the more like intuitive and like essence
the
type
heart.
things. Yeah, the heart of it, but it does include
Well,
all that other
everything else
stuff.
stems from all of that, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can come back and talk about the other stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do nuts and bolts later.
Yes. Okay. So you talk about brand being a rule of life. So have we covered that, or is that anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of covered that. So what I didn't share was just that part of my method um, was the translation of what I had been doing for clients and customers for so many years. And then I was introduced to what a rule of life is, and I recognized the connection between this articulation of who you are. So rule of life is really just defining, who you are, what you live by. Most of the saints have a rule of life that you can look up or Google and see that they decided and they were intentional about how they were going to live their life, the values they were going to adhere to, the practices, etc. And reading and learning about what a rule of life is, I was like, that's oddly similar to what the brand work that I do. And so a true you brand, which is, kind of the title, the name of the work that I do, that is kind of found its initial beginnings in this connection between a rule of life and what a brand can do for your life and your work.
I love
So
that.
yes, I guess, yeah, I feel like we've hit on that.
Yes. Yeah. Love that. Okay. So if someone is listening and wants to get into action around this right now, like what would you tell them? Where to start?
I would say maybe a couple of quick actions that you can take is start with yourself. Start with what makes you different. And I feel like the easiest thing to do is maybe it's your credentials, like your schooling. Do you have any certificates? Do you have any like history of doing X, Y, or Z? Do you have a particular methodology that you kind of would put on a resume? And then the other thing that I would say in there is now write down what your gifts are. What are the things that you naturally possess, that you are naturally good at, that is a gifting that you have that makes you stand out? So I would hone in on what those things are about you that make you stand out, and kind of in those two different categories. The next thing I would do is write down your values, and not from a sense like just a one word, like integrity or transparency. But what define what your values are, but then how does it show up in how you act? If punctuality, I was working with a client and it she was struggling in this value area because she was like, well, there's lots of good values. Like, I want to be all those things. And I said, yeah, right. Don't we all? We're like, oh yeah, I'm that too. And I'm that too. But I said, well, let's back up and let's look at how you already deliver on your services. Like, what are some commonalities in those areas that you naturally have? And so one of those was punctuality. And I think you would never usually, I shouldn't say never. I don't think it's a common value that somebody would be like, I am punctual. I'm going to list that as my top value for my business. But for her and her clients, it was something she always delivered on and something her clients highly valued. And so for her, what that meant was meeting deadlines. Her work is very deadline driven. And because she works with teams, it's like a domino effect. So punctuality was really important in her, defining how she was going to deliver on her services. And so, pick the word and then say, how does that show up? What does that look like from a client perspective? And then finally, I would take your services and, what those things, what you offer, I would define them and articulate how your values show up in those different services. I have a couple of freebies like on my website that would kind of easily, they're little workbooks. You could easily walk through those processes and articulate those for yourself. And I think you will find that articulation, that process of writing it out will make you feel lighter. It will make you be more clear about how you want to share. It will enhance anything you want to put on social media. It will enhance your conversations. And I guess maybe the last thing I would do is reach out to, and this is a great way to help build your network or community. I would reach out to your top colleagues, your top clients, your top stakeholders that might be, depending on the industry or business that you're in, and ask them for a testimonial. Why would you recommend me? What were the best services, strategies, or results you had with working for me? How did you feel when you were working with me? I would collect those stories, and they're going to do two things. They're going to make you feel good. And that's really important. And they're going to be kind of your social proof for others. And it might even help you articulate if you're kind of hung up on those values or you're hung up on your differentiators. It might be like a work backwards process. You'll read it in those testimonials and you'll be like, okay, I was right, or my hunch was right, or yep, I'm going to choose that value. And then start living with it. Start working with just kind of those 3-4 main areas and see how it feels. But I think I know you'll be well on your way to being more yourself and showing up in more the ways that you can sustain just by doing those simple things.
Those are amazing. Go back and rewind and write all of those down. I was like furiously writing those down too. That was so great. Okay. 2 last questions. One is, tell us so I want you to tell all the places people can find where you are. But before you do that, give us a little snapshot about Matchbox Women, because I know there's a story about why it's called Matchbox Women, and then tell us where we can find all about what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think the name might throw people a little bit, but I'm okay with that. The story really is, it came a story from my grandmother, something she shared with, I have lots of cousins, and it speaks into this community aspect that one matchbox or one matchstick is easily broken when it stands by itself. And you can actually do this. I've done it with my kids. If you put several matchsticks together, you'll find that you cannot break them. And so by coming together and being together, if maybe you're weak, but you can lean up against, the other people around you until you can be strong. And then they're going to need that leaning or that someone else to help support them. So the idea of Matchbox Women is us coming together and doing life and work together. So we're not as easily broken. So I hope that women as they look to, build their brand or do marketing in a way that's more aligned with them, would not do it alone. Doesn't have to be with me, but would not do it alone. So matchboxwomen.com is my website. There's a couple freebies on there. It's matchboxwomen.com/message mastery, or /branding authentic brand guide. And some of the stuff that we've been talking about, you'll find in those. They're just free. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Matchbox Women. My favorite place to interact, though, is on email. So I would love to invite any of your listeners that like more, relational communication to join me on my email list. And yeah.
Amazing. Check out what she's doing. I love the work you're doing. I'm so grateful for this conversation. And just thank you. Thank you for your time and your wisdom. And so grateful that our paths have crossed.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. This has been super fun. I loved it. Thank you.